It's easy to say that Spider-Man is one of the single most popular superheroes of all time, with billions being made every year off of the character's merchandise alone. But why is this? Why is Spider-Man so popular, and how has the character of Spider-Man managed to stay relevant for around 59 years? To answer this, we need to take a trip back to a certain year that is essential in unraveling the relevance of everyone's favorite webhead. The year? 1962. The place? New York. The people? Stanley Lieber and Stephen Ditko. Two people who would create something that would quite literally spiral out of their hands and into the world of success. Two people with a gift. Two people with a dream. Two people with lightning in a bottle. You see, a little comic book hit the shelves in August of 1962 that would forever change the landscape of not just comic books, but entertainment as a whole. A comic book that was on the verge of not being released, but was released as the final issue of a failing comic book series. A comic book that was nearly shut down by an editor before it even took off. The comic book? Amazing Fantasy 15. The lightning in a bottle? Spider-Man. Imagine this, if you will. You're a kid in the 1960s. You've never really fit in, and you're viewed as an outsider. However, despite all your problems, you immerse yourself into a fictional world every week. A fictional world in which anything can happen. A fictional world in which a kid like you can be powerful. So you read, and you learn more about the adventures of a kid a lot like you. A kid named Peter Parker. Peter is an outsider just like you, and just like you, all he wants is to fit in and to be respected by his peers. And when that spider bite happens, when Peter finally starts to fit in, you smile. You smile because you're grateful for Peter. You want him to fit in because you want to fit in. You want Peter to have the power that you never could. When things seem to be going great for Peter, you flip the page. When you flip the page, you see Peter Parker's arrogance coming full circle. One small action. One mistake. Well, it isn't Peter's job to stop that guy, is it? You think to yourself. You would have done the same. After flipping through a few more pages, you come to a dead stop because you learn how truly big of a mistake that was. Peter's Uncle Ben, the guy that he's grown up with the majority of his life, his father figure, is dead. As Peter realizes his mistake, you realize yours. Through all your troubles and issues, you realize that no matter what happens, arrogance leads to consequences. You learn that even a kid like you, who's never been an insider, even a kid that's powerless, can still mess up when given power. The power that Peter was given was not a gift, not a curse, but a little bit of both. You learn right along with Peter that with great power, there will always be great responsibility. Now flash forward almost 20 years later. Peter Parker, the bullied kid with big glasses and a sweater vest, is now grown up. After almost 20 years, you're still reading about the guy with spider powers who goes through troubles a lot like yours. You marvel at how he has still stayed relevant to you after all these years. You wonder how Peter Parker's life still somewhat mirrors your own. Just like you, that once lonely kid is married. And, like your life, it's not perfect. He tries his hardest to be the best person he can be, but he constantly makes mistakes. You feel his struggles because you're going through similar ones. You've been through similar ones. And while, say, the kid down the street isn't going through the exact same struggles, he can still relate to Peter in some way. And so can that kid's parents, and your neighbors. Heck, even the little old lady a block away can relate in some way to one kid, to one man, to one Spider-Man. Anyone who's felt helpless or powerless can read about him and relate. Because Peter, despite his incredible abilities and feats, and despite all his crazy adventures, has trials and tribulations just like you. Peter's human. He's not perfect, and neither are you. But what really matters at the end of the day is if you're trying to be better. Even if you've gone through hell and endured more troubles than most, you still have a responsibility. A responsibility to act through selflessness whenever you can. A responsibility to be able to lift yourself up, even when it seems like there's no tomorrow. Because like Peter, you have a responsibility to get up every single day, no matter how bad things may seem, and be able to provide an example. An example to kids a lot like you, a lot like Peter. An example to people who need that example. An example to people who need hope. You may not be Spider-Man, but in many ways, you are Peter Parker. No matter what happens, you know that your journey will not come without difficult choices. And like Peter, you hope that you'll have the strength to make those difficult choices. Like Peter, you have the responsibility to choose the right choice, even if it's difficult. Even if it makes things harder for a while, you know that you should never not try to always make the right choice. This is the exact reason that Spider-Man has stayed relevant for decades. Spider-Man is a character defined by choice and responsibility. Everyone can relate to Peter Parker in some way, and this is because underneath all the superpowers and grandeur, Peter Parker is the everyman. Anyone, despite their cultural background, can connect to some piece of Peter Parker in his lore. Spider-Man works because Peter Parker works. As time has gone on, Spider-Man has stayed relevant by being relatable. Anytime Peter Parker starts to lose his relatability, the writers find some way to bring his character back down to earth and back to a place of relatability. Peter Parker was created to mirror the outsider, to mirror the kid who was ignored, to mirror the reader. Now that creation, that Spider-Man, has turned into an icon for all generations. In the almost 60 years that Spider-Man has existed, there have been many changes to him and his lore. Spider-Man is a story that is constantly evolving and changing to fit the times, but one thing remains certain. No matter how much time passes, no matter how many times his story is retold, Spider-Man will never lose his relevance. Because Spider-Man isn't just a guy going around saving the day in tights. Spider-Man isn't a shallow icon. Spider-Man is you. Spider-Man is the kid down the block. Spider-Man is and always will be everyone.